So welcome to our deep dive for this week's Parashat Toldot, and I'm absolutely delighted to have with me Rabbi Daniel Kohn, who is the author of this great book called the Book of Yearning. I highly recommend it. It's about how to make the most of your prayer. And I'm delighted to invite you in, Rabbi, to help us unravel the mysteries of Toldot. And I'm really grateful for your agreement to be part of this awesome project. So we'll go straight into it with the first question. And the first question is really a Shalom Bayit question. We're told that Shalom Bayit is all about the father and the mother being in synchrony and unity, so to present a solid picture to the children. And here we have an interesting situation where Rivkah is told about the prophecy that the young one will serve, that the older will serve the younger. But for some reason, Isaac is not being informed of this. And this sets up a whole dimension of tension through which the story starts. And I'm just wondering how we're supposed to look at that from a sort of modern perspective, where these things are looked down upon, to have secrets between the parents that manifest down into the children.
Well, Shlomo, thanks for inviting me on, and thanks for the question, and also thanks for asking a question that comes right out of your name. A man named Shlomo is looking for Shalom. So I think that's actually a good thing to explore for a few moments, because you actually suggested a certain axiom, which I'm not sure I agree with, that the parents should be synchronized in a way in which they present or become a solidly unified, almost, it sounds like, identical being together. But the truth is that there's a kind of more of a symbiosis, I would say, between a man and woman, and in their each being so different, they like actually form a kind of a interaction which creates a much more profound type of unity, or at least I would say a unity that's more appropriate to this world. We live in a world where everything is like partial. Everything, because it's physical, is partial. We don't have the whole picture here, because consciousness, although it can and will ultimately expand to include everything, right now we live in a very partially designed world. So to have Rivkah and Yitzchak on the same perspective would be, just inappropriate to this world. And I can say, in over 40 years of marriage with my wife, thank God she doesn't have the same perspective as me, man. It's just like, it's so enriching and actually primarily corrective for me that my wife does not have my perspective on everything. Yeah, so I would say this is a great place to start, because it's a parsha of dualities. It's a parsha of contrast. It's a parsha of differences. It's really, a parsha named Toldot, which means progeny in the plural, means that we're going to be exploring how can two come out of one and be so different. And so also, that's the same question between man and woman. How can two come out of one and be so different? Now, I think that Rivkah just has a different perspective. The Torah does not hide that. She loves Yaakov. Yitzchak loves Esav. That's just the deal. So, but you see, the power here, I don't think is in, sort of the question of like, why did she hide it from him? I think a good woman knows what she can tell her husband, what she can't, what he's going to be able to hold and what he will not be able to hold. It's like I work a lot with like people in group settings, and like last night I had a group, and like I invited one of the members, because he was like projecting things onto other people in the group and stuff. I invited him to ask the person he was projecting his ideas about, what that person's thinking onto. I said, so why don't you just ask him what he thinks rather than telling him what he thinks? And then someone said, wait, I want to give him some, I want to answer the question, a different person in the group. And I said to him, there's no way that this person now, who is about to explore with the person he's talking to, is going to be able to hear you. If he wants to talk to you, he will reach out to you. I don't think Yitzchak reached out to Rivkah to hear what her perspective was on this. I think that because of his nature, which is din, which is very clear boundaries, he's not reaching out, and so I think Rivkah knows he won't be able to hear. But I'll just say one more thing. I don't want to take up all the time. I want to also hear your questions, but Rivkah, the very name Rivkah, get this, the very name Rivkah is actually a type of a yoke which is used to hold two oxen together. Yeah. So Yitzchak is the man of the single. And in fact, God refers to him that way when he talks to Abraham before the Akeidah, before the binding of Isaac, before the binding of Yitzchak. He says, take your son, your only son. He's the first person who's called the only one. He has a very unitary perspective. And so it's either Esav or Yaakov. But Rivkah is the one who bonds together. So she can actually see how it might work, that these two children could be in the world together. And she understands how that can work. And it has everything to do with Jacob getting the blessings, and Esau not getting those blessings, but getting different blessings. That's ultimately her intention. So the short answer is, never say anything to someone who will not be able to hear it, especially if you're in a marriage.
That's a great insight, and I really, really do appreciate that. Just as a follow-on of that, again, the idea that it's very interesting to see that Isaac loved Esav because for the game in his mouth. That whole statement to me is very curious. Since when is Isaac valuing game in somebody's mouth? It sounds so completely contradictory to his whole life mission that he should want something like that. I'm wondering where that came from. And secondly, it shows that the love he had for Esav is conditional, or at least there's a reason for it. Whereas the love that Rivkah had for Yaakov was unconditional. And again, the classic parenting thing in modern parenting is, not to treat each child equally, lovingly, and not to have a favorite. And this seems to get, again, a classic clash with that modern life wisdom.
Was that a question?
Yes. Unraveled it for us.
Unraveled it. Well, I think first of all, I've given a perspective here, which is Rivkah as the bonder, and so, yeah, she's got a very unique position in this home, and Yitzchak as being the singular one. Okay, so the advantage that the singular one has is the sort of single-mindedness. And a single-mindedness, and actually this is classic in father-mother, where the father's love actually is generally sort of more conditioned upon the kid growing up right. He's being straight, he's being what I expected, he's being what I want. The mother is in the maternal presence of her is far more inclusive, circular, as opposed to linear. The bonding as opposed to dividing. And most primarily, yeah, of course she has condition. The condition is that they were born of her, and they were, whereas the father is much more of a distant personality in general, to be honest about it, and becomes close to the ones with whom he shares. As painful as that may be to us, I think it's a fair kind of observation. I know it's something we would hope wouldn't be that way, but well, here we are in the Chumash, like you say. Let's take a look at what it says. So indeed, yeah, it says that he loves the game, and that's so cool that you put it that way, because that's actually not the literal meaning of it. The literal meaning of it is he loved that which had been hunted in his mouth. Yeah. So the rabbis actually play with this game. I actually like they use the word game because the fact is that they say it was, I'm going to go with the rabbinic interpretation here, and then we'll get back to the actual literal meaning. What they say is that actually Yitzchak presented himself in a deceptive fashion to his father, pretending to be aligned with God's will. And he did that asking fascinating set of questions that were actually halachic questions. Shlomo, I don't know if we're talking to people who know what the word halachic means, or like just do you just assume that, or like I don't know where you. Okay, so cool. So he asked him actually. I know we have to take tithes on everything that grew, but what about salt? And what about straw? This is super interesting because basically what he's presenting, without going too much into this, I know we have a short amount, and this will be useful for us, in getting the bigger picture. Basically what he's saying to him is, hey, like I know that I've got to pay my way in this world, that my existence on a profound level is actually conditional. God needs me paying him off all the time with these tithes, or in a religious sense with these mitzvahs and stuff. Hey, okay, I'm cool with that. I'm willing to play this game with him. And I will actually now ask you, how much needs to be paid for, including things which are not actually the prime things which we eat, but everything is about paying my way. So there's actually profundities in these specific questions about straw and salt, which I won't go into now because of the strictures of the time here. But this is a really interesting thing, because paying one's way in this world has many ways which we experience it. The most problematic in a way is righteousness, like obsessive righteousness, like I'm a dead man if I'm not completely good in God's eyes. And a lot of us walk around with that sense that, like, we don't really have a justification for being here, actually. If you would ask me strictly justice speaking wise, man, I've blown it so many times. It's like, so if you go deeper than that, more existential, it's like, what the heck? Like, did God do in creating you? Like, how am I supposed to ever justify that? How could I ever pay him back for that? I mean, everything I used to pay him back is actually what he gave me. So it's like, you get to this kind of an insane, which can become an obsessive religiosity, or become an obsessive drive to justify oneself, all kinds of things. Now, it's Yitzchak who was on the altar, who almost lost his life, and really, in a sense, faced more than anyone ever faced the question of, do I have anything to say to the God who wants to take my life? Like, can I justify myself? And when you're in a situation like that, there are two ways to go. I will obsessively invest in justifying my existence. There's another way to go, and that is, I can never justify my existence, but what I can do here is use the life that I've been given to bring about the very greatest flowering and blossom of life in this world. Two ways to go. So I think his attraction to Esav derives from the sense that Esav, this guy's really working hard to justify his life. I identify with that's a lower side of Yitzchak. The higher side of Yitzchak will ultimately come out when he recognizes that, he, and lives that, hey man, my name, I'm going to laugh. I'm going to laugh. I'm going to laugh at this insane attack to bring about God, seeing me as someone whose life is justified. I'm just going to laugh at that. And like, when you laugh at that, when you laugh at yourself, and in a way you, so to speak, laugh at the God of judgment, it's like, it's not going to go anywhere. Then you become free to live a life which is not about justifying yourself, but is about bringing about the very greatest flourishing of yourself and the world you're living. So his initial attraction indeed is to, and to get back to your first question, Rivkah, you can't talk to someone about that, Shlomo. It's like Rivkah cannot talk to him about, listen, hey, there's another way to look at things. Was she on the altar? No. So like, you're going to tell me what I came off the altar with? You don't get it. And he doesn't. He will later get that. The fathers are great patriarchs. The Torah does not hide the fact that they evolve, right? And so it's just that. So that's what he sees in Esav. This is a guy who earns his keep. He goes out there, he hunts. He goes out there and he pays his tithes. This is like the ultimate religious man who lives a life of righteousness with all the wrong intentions, but nevertheless, it looks good. So he loves him because he is someone who is earning his keep. And as you said, well, it seems conditional. Well, for Yitzchak, everything is conditional. Everything is conditional, including love, in that world, at that point of time in his spiritual evolution. So that's how I would relate to that. And it can bring us to some very important realizations. What we do when we come off the altar of the Akeidah, and we all do in certain ways when we reach these moments in our lives, sometimes when we feel like, oh my gosh, I could have everything taken away from me. I just sometimes did have everything taken away from me. Now what are you going to do? Now how do you relate to that? And so there's a very, very profound moment here in the Chumash, I would say. Yeah.
Amazing. I love that perspective. Thank you. So there is a confusion in my mind about, you have these two things, the birthright and the blessing. And for some reason, Yaakov feels the birthright is very precious. Maybe it's because he hasn't got it and he was never destined to get it because he was born second. And Esav, who has the birthright, spawns it. So I wanted to understand, what is the difference between birthright and blessing? And why is it that, you have these two people valuing it completely oppositely?
Great question. I like the way you put that. Well, I mean, first of all, the good news is that Bechorah, which is the birthright, or the first being, it's really not the birthright, they all have rights to their birth, but it's the firstborn, the primogenitor. It's like he's the firstborn, the rights of the firstborn is really more correct. And the other is Beracha. Bechorah and Beracha are actually the same word with an inverted kaf and resh, which is of great significance. But again, we're not going to go off onto that. But I just want to point out that they do seem to be intertwined. And I'll explain to you how they are intertwined. They really are, and why Esav gets it wrong, and why he would think he's entitled to it. Look, Esav is born first. Sorry, no way around that. He's physically born first into the world.
You can't change that fact. Whatever you can, you can't change that fact.
Rashi outsmarts that one, and he says the following. He says the following, and I don't think we're meant to take this completely literally. I think what Rashi is doing is giving us a metaphor. Rashi says the most fascinating thing. He says, look, these are twins, right? Okay, so that means that there was like this, the sperm came in at the same time, or pretty close to it. Now let's think about this, friends. He says, like if you put two things into a narrow container, one and then two, right? One and then two. Now you turn it over. So the first one that comes out is the last one that went in. Ta-da! Yeah. So now that's a very profound Rashi, even though it's also entertaining, right? Rashi is actually saying the following. He said that Yaakov is the product of the first intention, of the first desire, of the first realization of Yitzchak's dream and his vision. Esav is the second, meaning he's secondary to that and meant to serve it, which of course is the prophecy you mentioned at the beginning that Rivkah gets. Now here's the deal. Think about our lives, think about physical things. So you want to build a house, so you start building a house, The last thing that happens with this house is the people move in. But that was the first thing that the builder of the house had in mind, was that people would move. So when it comes to the physical world, the first thing that comes about is that which is actually coming to serve the purpose. But the purpose is what will then be, say, as a child grows, the consciousness developed, or in the case of this house metaphor, the family that moves. So now let me ask you, who's the first? Well, I guess it might depend on your perspective. If your perspective is the physical appearance in the world, indeed, Esav is focused on that. I'm the first. And Yaakov is the second guy. But Yaakov understands, and that's why he grabs the heel of Esav, because he wants it to be seen as a continuum. His arrival is part of a continuum.
Right.
And the ultimate emergence of that which was actually intended for. So that's on one level. That's on the first level, and that's a really important one. That's kind of like to give an answer to your question. But if we can, to go just a little bit deeper, Shlomo, is that just a little deeper, just a little deeper, is to recognize, and this is so elemental for us as children of, to recognize that to be the firstborn means, it means that you are forever devoted to first birthing, meaning you are devoted by the nature of who you are to innovating, to being the one who forges ahead in terms of idea, awareness, understanding. You are the one who is actually called out of nothing into something, always, constantly. The Jewish people is always starting again from zero. I mean, I know we have a great, deeply rooted tradition, but there's a certain attitude, especially if you learn Talmud, you'll see everyone's always breaking down what the other person said. Start again. That one didn't. People get frustrated sometimes learning Talmud because, I mean, did they ever get to a conclusion? And the truth is they don't really, because there's a primacy which is given to questioning everything that's said, because the orientation is, let's see if you can come up with something else, something new, something different. That is to be the firstborn in the deeper sense. I'm always being born anew. That is not appropriate to a man whose name is Esav, meaning Rashi, as Rashi explains, the one who was already made. This guy has an entirely different purpose in the world. He's not meant to be an innovator. He's meant to take what is and to make it better, to take what is, to make it thicker, to take what is. And in fact, the truth is, he doesn't even raise cattle, man. He goes out to the field and he hunts things down that have grown up in the wild. He doesn't make things. He seeks that which is made. So he's actually entirely inappropriate to the real inner meaning of firstbornness. And so he's also not entitled to the, because blessing means that in the context of God, for instance, blessing means that I am taking you and giving you more, right? I'm giving you more, right? And you, as the first, so to speak, the first moreness. If you have a parent alone and then you have the child is their blessing, their moreness. So the first moreness, which is the first blessing, is also the firstborn. So if I'm going to be the one who is innovating, bringing more, creating more, being born all the time, I am the essence of what blessing is, man. I'm the essence of what blessing is. So those come to, now again, I mean, this is not where Yitzchak is holding at that point, right? It is the nature of, and so Esav forfeiting the firstbornness really comes out of a recognition of his place in life, in the world. I don't want that, man. I don't want to be always relating to being born, because then that means I'm already always relating to the death that's going to come for me to be reborn. I don't like that. I'm going to die, like, I don't like that type of mortality thing, which comes along with being born, because if you're born, then you're going to die, I just like being with what is as it is. Leave me alone with this firstborn stuff, man. That's like reeks of mortality. I don't like that stuff. Just let me have my fun, hunting things down that have already been made, and live my life in peace. Give me that bowl of lentil. I like them. Yeah. So this is really, really important to understand about the nature of who we are also as the children of Jacob, like Yaakov. It's like we see reality as a continuum of the physical serving that which emerges from it, consciousness, awareness, openness to the divine, etc. Right? And our contribution to that is an ongoing process of innovating and bringing about the new. That's what it means to be the firstborn. That's quite different than someone who may physically be born first, but is not existentially born first.
Thank you. I want to move straight on to, Esav being 40, and at 40, which is the same age as Isaac, he takes himself, he wants to be like his father. but then he takes two Hittite wives.
Yeah.
And the Torah says specifically that this was a source of spiritual rebellion to both Isaac and Rivkah. And so, and straight after that, you have Isaac calling Esav in to give him the blessing. You would have thought that was a clear indication to Yitzchak that he would have developed this awareness that Esav was not the right. Why is he continuing with this notion of giving the blessing to Esav after this?
Yeah, well, if you look at those verses, so it's actually quite you're right. He's 40 years old. And just like dad got married when he was, I'll get married when I'm 40, right? So, yeah, Yitzchak married one, Esav marries two. How come you're marrying two if you want to be like? So this is a very profound thing. And I think it's also perhaps has to do with what you're asking. And that is Yitzchak in his being so singular, right? We talked about his singularity, this singular orientation. He marries, right? He's actually the only one who never takes a concubine among the patriarchs. He is singular. He is the man really, because he has such singularity of profound intimacy. When you have one wife, you got to, and when you got to work, if you do, things just get deeper and deeper. I was just exploring that with my wife the other day. When things happen between us that you need to ask forgiveness for or to make a correction, and it works, things get deeper between us because you expose deeper levels of the desire for connection, which wouldn't have been exposed had things not gone wrong. Very important thing. Now, if a guy marries, hey babe, you don't like it? I got the other one over here.
Right.
You never have to face down your issues with intimacy, with having to make corrections, because you've always got this to go to. He's not exactly like his dad, He's actually missing a very primal point about. Now, the particular embitteredness which this creates for Yitzchak and for, I would suggest, is probably a different sort of bitterness for each. And again, it might be a bit much for us to go into that right now. I wonder what the nature of the bitterness was for Yitzchak, and how much it had to do with what I just talked about that is being missed out on by. But I also wonder if that would really necessarily stand in the way in his mind of giving him the blessings, because look, I know this is a man who likes having a lot. And later in the later Parashat Vayikra, when he comes and meets, Yaakov, and he says, "Hey babe, I've got a lot. I've got a lot." And Rashi says, anyone who says they've got a lot wants more. If he had said, "I've got enough," or "I've got everything I need," this is a guy who likes multitudes. He likes having a lot. Okay, I get it. It's cool. I get it. And I can imagine that Yitzchak might see, on the one hand, he's missing out on it, but he is the man for doing things in this world. He's the man for creating multitudes, for accumulating great wealth, for having terrific productivity. I mean, 2 wives is better than 1. So on the one hand, indeed, he's missing out on something that holds very precious. But on the other hand, there's advantages. So I'm not sure it was enough to disqualify.
But I wanted to just ask you a follow-up question, because at the end of the parasha, we hear how obnoxious it was for Rivkah that Yaakov should marry a Canaanite, and to the extent that she said she would die if he did that. And we have this whole pasuk that Yitzchak is giving chinuch to Yaakov, go and marry somebody from my family. How come Esav didn't get this?
Oh, the man who Eretz Yisrael actually has to marry a woman from outside of, because the man for whom Eretz Yisrael is cannot be assimilated into the culture, because he must come to the land. He must come to the land. That's a different thing. Esav, the land is never meant for him. Mamish not. This is not, believe me, you live here, I live here. This is a land of austerity. This is not a land for people who seek the multitudes, So it's like, I think it really is perfectly fine for Esav to marry whoever he wants to marry. He has a different destiny,
Right.
which is not related to this land. That becomes very clear later on. Very clear.
It's beautifully put. Thank you very much. And I'm coming up to my last question, but I just wanted to let the audience know that apart from being a great rabbi and as a psychologist, you're a great musician. And I'm looking forward to you playing some live music for us, which is very soulful, beautiful music at the end of this. But let me just ask you my final question. And that is really the thing that bothers me most, Parashat Toldot and Yaakov, because we are told that Yaakov is Emet, Yaakov is truth, and he's Ishtam, and yes, I understand that he has to learn how to negotiate and live in a world that's not like that, and how to deal with the Lavans of this world and the cheaters of this world, and to be able to survive amongst them. I understand all of that. But what really bothers me is, in his essence, he is Emet, he's truth. And, the Pasukim are so hard to read with that background, because, when Yitzchak asks him, who are you? He says, Yaakov says to his father, it is I, Esav, your firstborn. I have done what you told me to do. Sit so that you may bless me. And it just, no matter how many times I read this, how many years I read this, creates such an unease within me. And I hope that you'll be able to give some relief to that uncomfortable feeling that our patriarch is not exactly being truthful in his ways.
Okay. I'll tell you what I think is going on. And why, although, there's obviously tension in that. Maybe I don't cringe at it the same way as you, and maybe it's painful. I guess it is painful that our world is calls upon us following to make a shift between, sort of like upfront. You see, upfront honesty is not. I could be like super upfront with you about all kinds of things right now. I'm not even gonna list them. But I could be Mr. And I know that place in myself. It's not a good place to go, even though it's absolutely and completely truthful in the sense of honest. I'll make this distinction because it's available. And in fact, last week's Parsha, God wasn't honest with Abraham when Sarah laughed and sort of belittled Abraham. God sort of censored that out of what she had said and said to Abraham, why did Sarah say that she's old when actually she had said that? So do you cringe at that one?
Not as much.
Oh, you also cringe?
Yeah, I mean, it does bother me, that whole thing.
So here's why it doesn't cringe in the eyes of the rabbis, because they say there's a higher principle than being honest, and that is peace and the love between a husband and a wife. And so to protect that peace, you can be, but that's because there's a higher than just putting it in someone. So we do see that there's a set of principles and values there that have given a certain priority to something above hard-faced honesty. And that's good advice for all of us. So now what happens when honesty and truth collide? You see, the truth is that Yaakov is entitled to those blessings. That's the truth. First of all, he fair and square. He purchased them. Second, as I explained before, he is existentially appropriate to them in a way that Yitzchak just cannot. What do you do when your dad doesn't understand? But what needing to bring about is something which ultimately he, and the entire civilization of the planet, perhaps even the existence of the future of human life in a way in which it will. It's big time, man. This is big. So does your principle of I'm honest Joe, man. I'm honest Joe. Let the world go to pot. Is that wise? Truth-filled. It might not be truthful, but is that filled? So first of all, I just want to kind of loosen up a little bit our definitions here. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to listen to when a child and says things in a way. Rashi cuts up the verse. He wasn't directly lying. He was like, I am. Esav is your, and I have done, which is to me the most touching thing. I really am doing what you've asked, even if you don't really know it. And so Rashi cuts up the words in a way which we know, come on, Rashi, really? Yeah, really. I know what you're going to hear. I know it. And I may not be upfront honest, but believe me, Dad, I'm entirely truthful.
That makes me feel a little.
Well, feelings really wasn't my intention. I hope I also said something true. If I just wanted to make you feel better, I would have pulled out my clarinet already.
Very good. Well, that's a great.
Yeah, great. I would love to play some music.
Yeah, please. I remember when we first met at the retreat you held in Tzfat, listening to you playing clarinet was one of the highlights of the retreat. And there were many highlights of the retreat, but there's something so beautiful and soulful in the way you play. And I just wanted to share that with the audience and give them a taste of that beautiful feeling that I felt when I.
Okay, let me make the appropriate adjustments here. I believe I make those in the audio. Do you remember what you told me to do?
I think it's you have to you have something with
inside the. I'm removing noise.
You want to get to high fidelity.
Original sound for musician.
That's it. And then underneath that, it should be.
So, yeah, let me just invite, as I translate the things we into special. So take a nice deep breath and let the vibrations of the sound just.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I want to end with a question that I ask all my guests, because I think it's a very revealing question. Work out what we need to do in our lives, and that is, how would you define your mission?
Increasing and enhancing the awareness, the dearness of the gift of life. That's really what I seek. Torah is a Torah. Music is really orients towards awakening in people an expanded experience. I have all kinds of things I do, like a group on WhatsApp for going through the Parashat in a way that it turns into like avoda, like what's the word? Meditation enhances that. So I conduct meditation. My having children, teaching, being the rabbi. I think they really all are bound together by seeking opportunities and expand people's experience of
I give you a blessing that Hashem should bless you with much success and abundance, not just in your meditation and group work and retreat, but also in your writing, which is really, again, I highly recommend the Book of Yearning, where anybody who wants to understand the prayers, how to get more out of the prayers, and to continue all the great work that you're doing. It's you have a real skill in understanding the human nature and helping create the right context in which to understand the world around us. And I commend you for that, and I pray that Hashem will give you many more opportunities to share that with the world.
Amen. And thank you for this one, Shlomo. And you should see much in this wonderful work you're doing and in all the work you do.
Amen. Thank you. And we're going to see you in a few time for another parasha. Please God.
Okay. I look forward to that.
Thank you so much. God bless you.